So that's what it's about.
So we got peanut butter and jelly.
Got peanut butter and jelly for real.
Détroit, le Paris du centre-ouest.
Come on, bruh.
That is utter nonsense.
Come on, bruh.
So far, so good.
We're back. Palace of Pistons After Dark. It's Tim here. I sound very sick. And I'm here back with Jasper, who had an electric debut with the John Collins and Arrest John Hollinger segment we ran.
That's right.
And we are back doing more trade stuff. December 15th, this came and went. And there hasn't been a trade yet. We're recording this on the evening of Friday, December 16th. So maybe by the time you hear this, some team traded away some bullshit fake player for a second-round pick. Don't think that'll happen. Today, we're talking about the trade market. I'm going to get into some Pistons fake trades that I've concocted and let Jasper review them. But first, I want to talk about the trade market. I've spent probably 45 minutes on Trade NBA and the ESPN Trade Machine and all these different sites, and I can't find like that many teams where it's like, okay, they're definitely making a trade. Like this is, if all the bad teams are happy with their young players, and like the good teams like Celtics, Grizzlies, Nuggets, like there isn't like a trade for them to make. Like, do you have any like thoughts on that? Like, can you think of a good team that should or will make a trade?
I mean, I can think of plenty of good teams that maybe should make a trade, and maybe a few that will make a trade. But no, it's actually really interesting you say that, because I have been kind of feeling the same way. Somebody threw it into the Palace of Pistons group chat today. They were talking about how, what's a realistic trade you could make for Saddiq Bey to the Celtics. And honestly,
nothing.
I don't have one. And
No.
It's really weird because I feel like the NBA, this is not a hot take. The NBA has probably the most talent it's had since the 1980s right now. But a part of that is that there's so many players that are kind of in this like weird place where they're either too good to be traded or too, or too valuable to what their teams do to be traded. And I think that this is one of those things that happens with like the hyper specialization of a lot of NBA players. Like we were talking about somebody like Grant Williams, I think is a great example. Grant Williams is a really good player.
Yep.
He's somebody you'd like to have on your team. But the fact of the matter is he's up for a new contract, and what he does for the Celtics is too valuable for them to justify moving him for somebody like Saddiq Bey that would help them in another aspect. It really feels like the only kind of trades you have going right now are either disgruntled stars going somewhere else, or it's salary dumps. It's something like that, where somebody's trying to open up some space, they trade away their crap for a decent player, and I don't know. It's a really strange place for the league to be in, because, Tim, I've been looking at the same thing. Honestly, like a couple weeks ago, when we had our first podcast, and I threw out the Saddiq Bey, Bojan Bogdanovic for John Collins idea. It's not just that is like, oh, that's a great trade. It's one of the very few trades that is feasible, that would make sense for both sides, that I've even seen here. And you're talking about other teams too, not just like the Pistons. You're talking like Utah. Like, where is a trade for Utah to really make in there? Maybe they move on from Kelly Olynyk, but like Lauri Markkanen, where is their incentive to trade Lauri Markkanen? I don't see any. Where's their incentive to trade Jordan Clarkson? I don't see any. So it's a really, really strange place for the NBA to be in right now. We know that we're going to get trades. It's going to happen.
It's going to happen. I mean, the NBA is in bed with Twitter and Elon Musk to make trades happen. Elon has been tweeting how Twitter users are at all-time high on the platform. I think it's officially going to set the all-time high if something crazy happens on whatever the deadline day is, February something this year.
You know what? Can you imagine if people were live assassination attempting during the attempted signing of DeAndre Jordan to the Mavericks a couple years ago? Wasn't that was crazy. That was an assassination attempt on not just DeAndre Jordan, but the entire Mavericks organization as well. They all flew down there. We knew where they were. So obviously, since people were tracking that, that was a genuine threat on their lives, and thank God they got through it.
Yeah, I'm not sure if @MauryJet has been suspended yet.
Yeah,
But,
wait. I'm actually wondering, for the DeAndre Jordan situation, would everybody tweeting about that get kicked off of Twitter now? Because according to Elon Musk, knowing where somebody is in real time is now a doxing attempt and a genuine assassination threat. So I think that whole thing, that was messed up. Somebody could have gotten killed.
Yeah, somebody could have gotten killed. I will hand out a personal check to someone who can get me @WeaverJet. I need to use that for something.
No. Troy Weaver takes the Greyhound bus everywhere. You forget he was at Syracuse for a long time. He's like Jim Boeheim at this point, I think. Like they both talk like such weirdos. Don't get me wrong. I mean, like I love Troy Weaver, but he and Jim Boeheim, they just mumble all the time. They sound like just such strange people. I just have to assume he takes the Greyhound bus. You know what I mean? To like save a little bit of money.
Either that or he has one of those cars that also like is a boat. Like he just doesn't really abide to like road rules. I mean, Jim Boeheim doesn't either, but doesn't
whoa, hey. Whoa. There's a lot of violence happening early on in this podcast. Things are getting testy.
But the one it's okay if we have violence. We've been a bit too negative in the past few pods. I'm trying to be more uplifting here. So the goal,
Jim Boeheim hit and runs. That's really positive.
No comment.
Oh God.
The goal of this pod with you today is to try to get the Pistons a dominant wing. I think that's the one thing that they're missing. The podcast is titled "The Missing Piece to the Pistons." I think the thing that they don't have is a wing that you can put out there and know that he is going to match up with the other premier wings in the league. I think it's the hardest thing to get. I think as much as we've loved Saddiq Bey, he has fallen off. You can take either stance on him, and I will agree with you. He's a good player, but he's also not who we thought he was at one point. He's not going to be up there matching up with even like the mid-tier small forwards of the league, the OG Anunoby, the Kyle Kuzma's. He is not at that level. He is a spot-up shooter who can't make shots right now. And beyond him, like unless you're telling me Cade's going to come back from surgery as a reinvented 3 guy, I don't see unless the Pistons draft one, there isn't like a dominant wing on the roster. And as we go through these trades and back to sort of like the trade market thing we were talking about, we look at the teams who are at the bottom of each conference. In our conference, it's the Magic, Pistons, Hornets, Wizards, Bulls. And in the West, as of right now, it is the Rockets, Spurs, Thunder, Lakers, and Timberwolves. Okay, we're going to count the Lakers out of this. None of those teams, let me check the East one more time. None of those teams have a great wing. The Wizards sure don't. Beal is a 2. The Magic can't really count Paolo yet. Pistons obviously don't. Hornets, Gordon Hayward doesn't fit the bill. Rockets, not yet. Spurs, Devin Vassell, maybe. Thunder don't have a 3-man that I can think of. Lakers don't count with LeBron. And the
Timberwolves have Anthony Edwards, but that's
he's not.
So
I mean, if we're
you're
talking
not
about,
getting him.
He's a 2. I think we're like Torian Prince is who we're talking about if we're talking about the Timberwolves. So. Sure. The way out of the basement is getting I think Zach Lowe is the one who calls him an apex predator wing. And we can't get one of those with the team. We don't have one of those with the team right now. We can try to trade for one, and I've got a few trades that either get us closer or get us an actual apex predator wing that I'd like to share with you. But do you agree with my sentiment? Like, the wings run this league, right?
Absolutely. I'm one of those people, I like to latch on to little sayings. Like, one of my favorite John Wooden quotes is, why do we run screens? To make the defense think. And that's just one of those things that is so true on every level of basketball that if you don't just have it in the back of your mind, then you're not properly running your team. And I think that's the same thing it comes to with wings when it comes to roster construction. You win regular season games with your backcourt. That's what happens. You win it in the backcourt. You have to have a great point guard. You have to have a great creator of some sort. when you're in the playoffs, you have no chance unless you have a dominant wing of some sort. And that's just the fact of the matter. It's been true for every single team that has won the championship since, I would say, the Dallas Mavericks. That's the last one that I can think of that did not have a wing player that was a complete matchup problem for the opposing team. You can maybe look at Golden State, but even then, like, I look at Klay Thompson as a guy who goes both ways. You just need somebody that can be versatile offensively and defensively. And the Pistons simply don't have that. I know we all were thinking maybe Saddiq Bey can become that guy, but I've been saying it since the beginning of the year. I don't think he's that guy. I think he is an extremely high-level bench scorer. And that is valuable. That's something that you do need. But that's not what takes you over the top. Now, can Cade Cunningham, with his size, maybe make up for that? I don't know. Like, that's really the thing. You don't know right now.
Yeah.
But you're 100% correct. Yes, you need to have a dominant wing, or at least a guy who can match up with an opposing team's dominant wing in the playoffs. It's a must. It's an absolute must.
Let me take a detour right there. Just this wasn't planned, but I think it's a willing conversation. It needs to be had on our Pals of Business podcast. I don't think you guys are going to talk draft over there on the main feed yet, but
I don't know, man. Cade's out for the season.
that's kind of where I'm going here. So Cade, hypothetically, he's 6'6", he's got the size to be that kind of wing. Do you think there's a world in which they kind of go OKC and draft like Scoot, or could you target a guard? And I mean, the ball's going to be in Cade's hands regardless. I feel like they would have to draft Victor Wembanyama for the player to join the Pistons. Victor Wembanyama, or trade for like a top 10 player in the league for the ball to not be in Cade's hands next season. Would you envision Cade being a 3 or being an off guard? Because I don't think I want that from what I've seen, but I also haven't been given it yet. So
I think it's feasible, but it's not something that I would plan on. Like, that's not how I would construct my roster with the idea, we're going to make Cade Cunningham a 3. Like, he'd be undersized. At 6'6", straight up, he'd be undersized. He would have an athleticism deficiency compared to guys like Paul George, Kawhi Leonard. He wouldn't necessarily match up in that way. I really like what Cade brings as like an off-ball guy. I think he's the type of dude that can, if you're switching everything, that's a person that you're comfortable having, where you're like, okay, we have our star small forward matched up on Paul George. The opposing team runs a switching action in order to, maybe they can't get a big on Paul George, but they try and get a guard on Paul George, and it turns out to be Cade. I'm very comfortable with that. That I'm cool with. But yeah, 100%. You just cannot depend on a 6'6" limited athleticism primary ball handler to turn into a elite small forward. It's just, if he was 6'8", and I hate to say it, but this is one of those things where, coming out of college, one of the reasons why I was so sold on Cade, coming out of high school, was they said 6'8", 6'8", 6'8", and then turned out he was 6'6".
Yeah.
And it's not a huge difference, but it is a difference, and it does matter. And I don't think it's something that you can just like ignore. So no, for me, if I'm going into this draft, if I'm not getting a top 2 pick, where I do think you have to take Victor Wembanyama if you get the first pick. And I really do think, as of right now, you have to take Scoot Henderson if you have the second pick. But if you don't, there's guys there who, yes, they're more shooting guard types. Like you talk about the Thompsons, you talk about Cam Whitmore. But I'm still, Nick Smith is another guy too. But I'm still comfortable with taking those guys because they do have the off-ball skills. And I could convince myself that I can develop them into a small forward type, into a real wing player. If you give it a little bit of time, get them in the weight room, who knows?
Yep. So I'm hearing what you're saying, and we're going to go to the fake trade section of the podcast here. Sounds like we need to go get one. Sounds like the Pistons need to go get one.
I hate to say it because I love this upcoming draft class, but frankly, in the top 10, there's just not a lot of guys that you're like, I can slide that guy in as, my small ball 4. or my regular 3. There just aren't a lot of guys like that in this draft, which is, unfortunately, that's the number one thing they need right now.
Yeah, I think it's a little bit early to say that because there's been guys who get on an NBA team and like are immediately that guy.
Sure.
That come out of the blue. Like I haven't done my work.
Scotty Barnes. First off, who was talking about Scotty Barnes as a surefire top 5 pick, in December of 2019?
Yeah.
There were not a lot of people doing that, period.
Yeah.
There was talk, maybe he could, but it doesn't even happen until the end of the season. So you can't overstate it at this point. I agree with you.
All right. I'm going to share my screen here, and we're going to figure this out. This first trade that we're going to run here, these first 2 are kind of filler trades to get to the main point. I wanted to, ramp up. I can't be doing a bunch of crazy stuff. So the first one...
This is Pals of Pistons After Dark, but even we have our limits.
Yeah, we'll get to the war crimes. I believe if there's a team willing to give up a first-round pick, it's a team that already has one, or a bunch of them, and the Jazz have an extra first-round pick, and I think they would trade it, specifically the Timberwolves' first-round pick this year, which would probably slot anywhere between 10 and 22, I would say, because they could come back and have a great year, for Saddiq Bey. The Jazz are trading the Timberwolves' first-round pick this year for Saddiq Bey. I think this gives the Pistons a first-round pick that they can take or trade, because I want to say this now at the beginning of trade season, and I feel like I'm the only person who is thinking like this ever since it happened. In the 2020 draft, the Pistons traded a heavily protected first-round pick to the Rockets for Isaiah Stewart. Mm-hmm. Their protections on it make it so unless the Pistons make the playoffs, basically, it goes to
2 second-rounders, right?
Yeah, it's 2 second-rounders. Yeah. But until the Pistons make the playoffs, they basically have the pick. I think it's 2027 when it converts to 2 seconds no matter what. And that pick has been traded so many times that the Knicks now have that pick from the Thunder, who got it from the Rockets. I believe I'm correct. So, Jasper.
Who would that have been for? Oh my God, now I need to look this up.
the Isaiah Stewart trade was the one that set this all in motion. So I think Troy knew what he was doing by putting the Pistons' first-round pick in jail and trading Saddiq, getting an unprotected first. I don't think... If there's a team doing it, I think you have to. Or if the Pistons can acquire an unprotected first from anybody, for anybody in our team that's not Ivey, Durant, Cade, Stewart, I think you kind of have to do it. So what do you think?
I love this. Like I said, I think Saddiq Bey has value. I still think he's a good player. I think that he's a player that absolutely could continue to grow. I mean, look, the three-point shooting falling off, that sucks. But the fact of the matter is, he has improved his interior scoring greatly. And if you do get improved three-point shooting from him, if he can somehow go back to just 36% from deep, I still think that's a really, really useful player, even if he doesn't develop into a really good defender. So for me, yeah, I would still do this though, because I don't necessarily see that defense ever going to a place where he's your surefire starter in the playoffs. I'm definitely willing to do this. An unprotected first-round pick for a guy that I see as a long-term bench piece, 100%. I'm doing this all day, every day, Tim. For me, I think with the Jazz, boy, does this make sense for them. It really might. They don't really have a whole ton of guys that fit that bill for them at the small forward position, now that I'm thinking about it, do they?
And Danny Ainge loves Saddiq Bey. We know that the Celtics rumors for Saddiq popped up his rookie season when Ainge was still the GM. We know he likes him. As much as the Jazz have been a welcome story, they can do anything right now, and they're still a team in progress. They don't have long-term things. It should be a different team's decision to pay Saddiq whatever they think he's worth. And if we can get a first-round pick out of it, I think the Jazz are the team willing to do it. All right.
Yeah.
Next one. Kind of similar vein, getting us a first-round pick. The Pistons are acquiring Patrick Beverley and the Lakers' 2027 first-round pick. And the Pistons are sending Saddiq and Marvin Bagley. And I think this trade, we probably waive Beverly or I guess keep him at 13, but I don't want him to corrupt the players on the team, unless he's gonna turn Killian into like a fighter.
Maybe you play him over Kojo, but I don't know.
Yeah, maybe. He would start crying and leave the Pistons and want to buy out. I think the Pistons are really regretting, or at least I hope to God they are regretting their Marvin Bagley contract. $12.5 million is not a lot, especially with the cap going up. But you take him out of the starting lineup, you put Durant in, and you have your future front court. I don't want to trade for I would trade for John Collins, but anybody below that I don't want to trade now because of how good Stewart and Durant have looked together. That's obviously I'm going to eat crow if something crazy happens like that. But if Bagley and Bey, which would completely help the Lakers more than Beverly ever would, the 2027 first is an asset. I don't care what people say, like, oh, it's so far away. It's an asset. The Pistons will have a first-round pick to trade again, and we don't know where they'll be at that point. Jasper, what do you think?
I think from my perspective, I think this is a really appealing trade. I think from Troy Weaver's perspective, much less so. And that's why I don't think this is a trade that's necessarily going to happen. If the pick is unprotected, that obviously changes things. But overall, if I'm Troy Weaver, I'm looking at it. 2027, that's a long way away, brother. That is a long way away. And there is no guarantee that Troy Weaver is going to have that job in 2027. So for me, I look at something like this. I'm not sure that is an appealing trade to me if I'm Troy Weaver. Marvin Bagley, you just signed him for 3 years. Giving up on him this quickly and punting down the line, I think it just kind of sends a message that you're not really confident in what you've done this last offseason, and you're not necessarily even confident that this team is going to be all that good moving forward. From an asset for asset, perspective, I think it makes sense. I personally don't love Marvin Bagley. I didn't like the signing. I still don't really like the signing. So for me, I think getting an unprotected first rounder, getting out from underneath that contract, I think that's good. However, I think from Troy Weaver's perspective, it doesn't make sense. And it's 50-50 for me. I get it, but I don't think... I think it's a no. I hate to say it. If I'm coming from the perspective of this front office, I think that's a no.
Yeah, I get that. Trading with the Lakers has so many problems and wrinkles. You wish that the pick was anything but 2027. Any bit sooner every year sooner is better for the Pistons.
The thing as well is if Marvin Bagley and Saddiq Bey play well for the Lakers, you are going to be eating shit about that trade forever.
Yeah.
People will never let you forget it.
Yeah, but also Saddiq Bey and Marvin Bagley playing good for the Lakers, it's not necessarily the Pistons' problem. The Pistons will walk into next summer with $60 million in cap space if you make this trade. And we've talked about, cap space doesn't matter if you're a market like Detroit. I really believe in Troy Weaver's ability to make something happen with $60 million that's better than Marvin Bagley and Saddiq Bey. And you got a first-round pick out of it. But as the premier Marvin Bagley hater, wanted to see him gone. Now let's get to the quest for a great wing. And
This is what I came here for.
Yeah, this is going to get bad. I just want to let you know, this is going to get bad.
Oh, I love it.
All right. I think, speaking of teams regretting their contracts that they've given out, I think the Denver Nuggets have or will regret the Michael Porter Jr. contract. I don't have the exact number in front of me. I could do a quick Google, but I don't want to. This is after dark. I don't care that much. Michael Porter Jr. is going to be making $31 million or more for the next 5 seasons, and that is too much. And I think the Nuggets would sacrifice him for Bojan and depth. So I have the Nuggets getting Bojan, Nerlens Noel, free Nerlens, and Saddiq Bey. So they're getting a crap ton of shooting. Not as much as Michael Porter Jr. maybe could be, because he could be 6'10" Klay Thompson. But Bojan helps them win now. You don't have to worry about him as a defender like you do Michael Porter Jr., who has the tools but literally cannot figure it out. Saddiq Bey not a good defender, but has the shooting in the right spot. Obviously, Jokic is the best player in the world at finding open shooters. And Nerlens Noel, is he better than DeAndre Jordan? I'm not sure. If I was the Nuggets, I would be regretting the Michael Porter Jr. contract because of his health. The Pistons are taking a huge swing here.
Yeah.
Jasper, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, that's you said it. They're taking a huge swing. This dude can't stay healthy. Dude cannot stay healthy. And for me, that's the thing that scares me. I mean, we're not just talking 1 or 2 injuries. College, hurt. Last year, hurt. This year, hurt. Rookie year, hurt. He is always hurt. And while I totally agree with you, like, that's the Pistons should be taking swings on guys like that who have high upside, haven't necessarily been able to show it. Somebody like, say, I don't know, Bol would have been a nice guy to get on the team.
Yeah, would have been crazy if Bol could somehow have been a Piston.
Yeah, I mean, imagine, but there's no way they could have gotten him. I mean, you know, they didn't have anything to trade. What were they gonna do? Give up Rodney McGruder for Bol?
Yeah, yeah.
Anyway, I think for me, man, if I'm looking at this, you're talking about all this cap space for the Pistons moving forward, and this does give you a really, really good wing. However, you're still really bad defensively on the wings if you have Michael Porter Jr., and that is not nothing. And if you can't rely on him to stay healthy, boy, that's really tough to trust. I don't know. Does Michael Porter Jr. at that contract, does he represent an upgrade for you? Genuinely an upgrade for you over Bojan Bogdanovic for the next 2 years? If we're counting health in here, I don't know that he does. I'm just being completely real with you here. I don't know if he does. Because he can give you a little bit more rebounding. He's an amazing, incredibly talented offensive player. But I don't know if you noticed, Bojan Bogdanovic is putting up 50, 40, 90 this year. Like, that dude's no slouch either. And what's
crazy is that, like, this trade makes the Nuggets, like, the clear Western contender. Like, the clear, like, team coming out of the West.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. Look, I do think Nerlens Noel is an upgrade over DeAndre Jordan. I do think that Saddiq Bey gives them another nice look in that backcourt. Not that backcourt, excuse me. It gives them a nice look coming off the bench, especially. Or, honestly, they could even start him. If you don't mind the, Michael Porter Jr.'s bad defense, why does Saddiq Bey's bad defense bother you too? So, I think for me, that would really help them a lot. That's a team that struggles so much when they don't have Jokic on the floor, even when they do have Michael Porter Jr. healthy. So I look at that. I think Bojan is a guy that, honestly, you even trust with the ball in his hands more as like a playmaker maybe for others, more so than Michael Porter Jr. too. So I think it makes the Nuggets a lot better. I think it hypothetically gives the Pistons more talent long term. I just don't believe Michael Porter Jr. can stay healthy, and I haven't since he was in college. It's why I wanted the Pistons to stay away from him when he was coming out of the draft. And I've been pretty much proven correct in that point. Yeah, he's great when he's healthy, but he's never healthy. It's really a toss-up for me, honestly. I can see somebody talking themselves into the talent of Michael Porter Jr. and saying, hey, if what you're saying is the Pistons need talent, this guy's talent. He's young, he's talented, he's under contract, you don't have to pay him, you have all this cap space that you might not even be able to use. Boom, that's a great use for it. Are you going to be able to sign a free agent this offseason that's better than Michael Porter Jr.? I don't know about that.
I don't know
about that. But at the same time, those injury concerns, they just scare the shit out of me, Tim. I can't lie. It scares the hell out of me. And also, last thing on this, I've said it before, I think what Bojan Bogdanovic brings to this team as a veteran, what he brings to the team off the court and on the court in terms of the way that he talks, leads, you can't replace that with Michael Porter Jr. That's not an adequate replacement.
Yeah. Unless you had Cade, who was like really rounding into form and could steer the ship. With Cade not being on the floor, like, you can't.
Cade's never been the part of a winning NBA team. Like, I love Cade. I think this dude's a stud. I think he can be that leader. But in order to like teach other people how to win, you have to learn how to win first. And the fact of the matter is, dude just has not done that his first 2 years in the NBA. I think having Bogdanovic on the team really is a boon to them in that sense.
Yeah. All right, let's go to the next one. I don't want to spend too much time on this one because this was a very, very late one. We've already battled off on a lot of these players already.
Oh, Tim. Oh, what are you doing?
The Bulls are acquiring Bojan Bogdanovic, Marvin Bagley III, Saddiq Bey, and a Pistons 2023 second-round pick. And the Pistons are acquiring DeMar DeRozan, who reunites with Dwayne Casey and Kobe White. This one is bad. Jasper, go.
I congratulate the Detroit Pistons in their attempt to acquire every single two guard that lives in the mid-range. We got Killian, we got Cade. Yeah, why not bring in DeMar DeRozan? It's going to look like the opposite of one of those Houston Rockets shot charts from the James Harden era. It's going to be everything inside the line.
It's just a thick line in between the
no layups,
rim.
no layups, no threes. Just elbow jumpers, baby.
Just a thick U that lives in between the 3-point line and free throw line.
That's right. We're bringing back the mid 2000s.
All right.
It's 2004 again. Real quick, I'll jump on that one. I actually just don't think that makes sense for the Bulls. I actually think that'd be a really, really good trade for the Pistons. I don't think the Bulls would do it. No way.
Yeah, I was trying to just think of bad teams who would give us their wing. DeRozan, I don't see him liking this one bit, even though he probably does love Dwayne Casey. Kobe White has been rumored to be traded forever and his salary matched. I did this one. Okay, let's get to it.
I have to quickly mea culpa on this one. One of the worst takes I've ever had in my entire life, Tim. I said, coming out of that draft, I'd rather have Kobe White over Ja Morant.
Holy shit.
That is like one of the worst takes.
At least you're willing to stand on it and admit it. There's a certain person in NBA media who is still a Luka Doncic hater.
No of him I do.
yeah. There's we don't need to go into that today. I think this next one is the one I hope it is. It's my favorite one and the reason why I came up with these. Yes, we are correct. Okay, 3-team trade here. Looks like a war crime, but hear me out. I was walking down the stairs, and I was like, can the Pistons get Brandon Ingram?
I'm sorry, you were walking down the stairs, and then you fell and hit your head on each one of those stairs before
No.
you landed?
My thought was, can the Pistons get Brandon Ingram? And I figured out a way in which they could do that. So, the Pistons are acquiring Garrett Temple and Brandon Ingram. The Pelicans are acquiring Kevin Durant. And the Nets are acquiring Bojan, Marvin Bagley, Saddiq, Jaden Ivey, the Lakers' first-round pick. And if the Pistons had a first-round pick to trade, I would throw it in there. If the Pelicans, they have more picks to trade, but they shouldn't have to. And then, I'm crazy for this. I want the Pelicans to have KD. I want the Pistons to have Ingram. I think Brandon Ingram perfectly encapsulates the type of wing that would fit in Detroit and does all the Detroit things and is a straight-up bucket and would fit perfectly. They give away Bojan, Bagley, Bey, Jaden Ivey, who is a key point. I think the Nets would look at Ivey as a foundational building block for the future. Obviously, Kyrie's gone after this year. They really shouldn't bring him back. This is the Nets' way of blowing it up. They get the Lakers' first-round pick, which might be top 10, 5? You don't know. I'm pretty sure it's unprotected. So they get Ivy and the Lakers first and role players from the Pistons for Kevin Durant. And the Pistons come out of there with Brandon Ingram and Garrett Temple.
Wow.
This is the Nets blow it up trade.
I feel like I just walked in on my grandparents having sex looking at this trade. I'm appalled. I'm horrified. I'm confused. I'm questioning all my life choices that brought me to this point. Holy hell. Okay. Lot to unpack here, Tim. Well, let's see. Okay, first off, let's look at this from the Pistons' perspective. That's too much. I honestly think that is too much to give up for Garrett Temple and Brandon Ingram. I like Brandon Ingram a lot, but is he my alpha dog? I still don't see him as that. I see him as maybe. I really think he's the second best player on a championship contending team. and that's only if the best player on that team is like a top 5 guy. Boy, I mean, I love his game.
You're that low on him.
I don't think that's low. I mean, Chris Middleton is that kind of guy, right? Is Brandon Ingram that much better than Chris Middleton?
I think Ingram is the best of that Middleton tier of wings. I agree with that. I think he can create. Yes, and I misspoke earlier when I said he'd be in a lineup with Ivy. Obviously, he wouldn't. But Cade, Ingram, Durant, draft pick, free agent that you can bring in with this extra cap space the Pistons will have. Like, there are the makings of, okay, we just got the hardest guy to get, which is the 6'8" guy who could score 27 a game. We just got the hardest piece to get. Now, can we get maybe an upgrade over Killian? Can we get a deeper bench? Can we get someone who has shown more than Saddiq Bey? Maybe someone who's cheaper than Marvin Bagley? And yes, I hate giving up Jaden Ivey in this, but if I'm going to choose between a 6'4" point guard who is super athletic and might become a great point guard one day, or someone who I know can get me 25 a game, I'm going the guy who can give me 25 a game at 6'8" every time. I'm sorry.
To me, this is the trade you make after you know where you're drafting. If you know you're going to get Scoot, if you know you can get Scoot Henderson,
but then why would the Pelicans give up?
No, they wouldn't, which is again why I don't think this trade necessarily makes sense. Tim, you're kind of killing me here, because actually, like, now the more I'm looking at it, I'm like, okay, if this isn't a trade that would happen. I don't.
You're right. It's right? Not. This is not a trade that would happen.
I wish I had like more time to think about this. Again, much like walking into my grandparents having sex, I really wish I need some more time to think about this before I can really, really unpack everything that's happening in front of me. I'll say this. I think you're right. Yeah, look, Brandon Ingram represents a huge upgrade over the wings you currently have on your roster. More so, look, let's be real. What would it take for Brandon Ingram? I think a trade of that kind of package. I think the Pelicans absolutely would do that. You get, I mean, with the team they have right now, I think you can talk yourself into saying, screw it. Like, we can go for it all this year, and even if we don't do it this year, we can do it next year. Boy, and Garrett Temple's also, let's just say that, like, he's not just a throw-in. Garrett Temple's a nice player. I like him a lot. I've always liked his game. It's a trade that makes me a lot better.
He's the first black person named Garrett I've ever seen. Have you ever, like, I
Garrett
think of
Wilson.
Okay. Yeah, so Garrett
But
Wilson's
he's still the first. Garrett Temple came first.
Yeah,
Garrett Temple came first. Yeah, yes. Wow. That's a good point. Hey, Donovan Collins is the first white guy named Donovan Collins that I've ever seen in my life. So it happens, man. Like, it happens to the best of us. Jeez, Pete. Sorry again, guys. Look, I think it's too soon to give up on Jaden Ivey. That's really where I'm at right now. I love the idea. I love Brandon Ingram. I think it's just one of those trades where you look at it and you go, ooh, what the... Where are we going? What are we doing? What's the plan then necessarily? Right? Like, are we then going all in for next year? Is that the plan?
Yeah.
You have somebody like Brandon, you're making a trade for somebody like Brandon Ingram, and you're moving your best trade asset in Bojan Bogdanovic and your top pick from this last year for Brandon Ingram. You better be winning 45 games next year. You better be. Or you better hope that Jaden Ivey's a bust.
Yeah, I get this. I was walking down the stairs. I would literally go out my room down the stairs, and we can't control our thoughts. You learn that in therapy. You can't control your thoughts. The thought that came to my mind was, could I trade Kevin Durant to the Pelicans and the Pistons somehow get Brandon Ingram? All right, let's go do that. So I did that, and that is a result of the power many minutes we just spent on this trade. The last one, can't lie, don't remember what this trade is. So it's gonna be better. It's gonna be bad.
It's a surprise for
everyone. I remember what this trade is. The Pistons acquire Russell Westbrook, the 2029 first-round pick, the 2027 first-round pick, and the Lakers acquire Bojan, Nerlens Noel, Marvin Bagley, and Saddiq Bey, effectively getting them out of all of their problems for the cost of their future only tradable first-round picks. And Russell Westbrook, who has been better lately, you would hope the Pistons would waive him. This goes back to my cap space type deal where Pistons will have an insane amount of cap space and hopefully do more than take on bad contracts and trade for expensive players with assets attached. The Pistons will have 2 firsts to trade because, once again, they do not have their first-round pick to trade. Somebody out there thinks these first-round picks are valuable. Obviously not enough because they haven't moved yet. And the Lakers solve all of their problems. They get shooting in Bojan. They get a decent backup big in Marvin Bagley and Nerlens Noel. Saddiq Bey is a project for them on the wing, better than Austin Reeves. And yeah, we basically hand the Lakers a path back to contention. If it's too late, we'll see. By 2027, Anthony Davis will be a scarecrow, and LeBron will be the owner of the Las Vegas NBA team.
Yeah.
So the Pistons have a huge future upside play trade thing. The one thing is you have to take on Russell Westbrook's $47 million for right now. It would be 4 months.
Yeah. Ah, man. I think this is the same kind of concept as the first Lakers trade. Let's be real. Like, it comes down to, if you're Troy Weaver, are you really planning? I mean, you're really that confident in your position where you're taking on first-round picks for 7 years from now? 7 years from now. That is a long way away, my man. Like, that's just a tough thing to talk myself into as a GM. Even more so, taking on the Russell Westbrook contract, it's like you have to make big signings this offseason. And where are those signings coming from? I mean, like, Kyle Kuzma's probably like the 4th, 5th best like free agent coming up into this free agency class. So is that necessarily like I think for me, looking at it as not just as like a fan, but as somebody who tries to on some level objectively look at this team and see where they're going, I have a really hard time buying this as a good move for Detroit. You have to win at some point. Like, the fact of the matter is, this team can't keep treading water and acquiring picks and going, oh, well, if we just, we got to just tank for one more year. Then we get this guy. Then we get this guy. Then we get this guy. But you're trading away all your veterans. At a certain point, man, you're just treading water. That's all you're doing. And I look at this trade as a way, you're just treading water on here because you're moving away from Bojan Bogdanovic. You're moving away from Saddiq Bey. Are they necessarily guys that in 3-4 years are the backbone of your team? No. But are they guys that can get you into the playoffs next year? Abso-fucking-lutely. Is Russell Westbrook? No. Is a 2027 first-round pick getting into the playoffs next year? No. And I don't see how this puts you into a better position, not just for next year, but for the year after that. And then if we get to the year after that and you're still not winning, then you're talking about Cade Cunningham on the last year of his rookie deal having lost 4 years straight in Detroit. And seeing the team trade away its best veterans, trade away some of its young guys. For what? Picks in 4 more years down the line after that? That, to me, if I'm a young player like Cade Cunningham, if I'm a young player like Jaden Ivey, I'm looking at that and I'm saying, you're not a serious franchise. Period. You're not serious about winning. I'm sorry, it's the same, and people can push back on me because of this, because the process in some way, shape, or form might have worked out. I don't think it did, but some would argue it did. I think you're looking at something that's similar to, like, the process, but longer. The process was, 3-4 years? It wasn't that long. The Pistons have been losing and losing badly for about that same amount of time. If you're talking 2 more years onto that, you're talking about a stretch of futility that is, brother, we're getting to the Timberwolves range here. We're talking Sacramento Kings, like Ron Artest Sacramento Kings, where it's like, what the fuck are you as a franchise? Honestly, what are you? Where are you going? What is the vision? So for me, no, I can't justify this. I can justify it on paper, but if you're looking at things long term, I can't justify a trade like this. At all. At all.
Yep, you can't. I wanted to put this one last because I think there's a lot of people out there who will say the Pistons should try to get a future first that's this far down. Like, you take the first no matter what, and I don't think it comes at the cost of Bojan or, I mean, if it's Saddiq, yeah, but if it's Bojan, I don't.
I'm just walk back my comments on the earlier one. Yeah, I think if you do the Saddiq Bey for an unprotected 2027, yeah, you can do that one. You can justify that. You can't justify this.
We would never know. We would never know what they do in a vacuum. Trading for 2027 first is bad. We thought the same thing about the Jeremy Grant trade when it happened a few days later, or it might have been same day. They get Jalen Durant. Like, so we don't know what's going to happen, but I'm warming up to Saddiq is worth the unprotected first. That's this far out. Bojan is not. Bojan, if he is, like, I think there were so many months. I'm going to end on this. There were so many months where we convinced ourselves Jeremy Grant is worth a first-round pick. Can we get DeAndre Hunter? Can we get all these great young players for him? And then he was traded for nothing, and that nothing became Jalen Durant, who you and I would both say confidently should be the Pistons center for the next 10 years. Like, he
third most important player on this team.
He has it. He has it. So
yeah,
what I'm saying to end this podcast is the Pistons should make a trade that gets them future first if the asset is below the threshold of Bojan. The Bojan is worth like several firsts now, or a comparable player who will help them win now. But even then, like, he's worth one of those guys who's worth more to us right now than anybody else. And the last possible thing I'll say is that the Brandon Ingram trade that I created is the best fake trade in
I hate
history.
to say it, you're right. You're actually right. It's the one that genuinely makes the most sense for all three teams. I can't believe it. I'm like, the more I looked at it, I'm like, well, I could talk myself into this if I'm a Nets fan.
Let's do it. One more time. Pistons get Garrett Temple, Brandon Ingram. Pelicans get Kevin Durant. The Nets get Bojan, Bagley, Bey, Ivy, and the Lakers' first-round pick this year. Make it happen. Jasper, thank you for being on here. Appreciate you, man.
Always a pleasure, brother.